All right, today we're going to be doing an overview video of the Kawasaki Prairie 400. This particular one is an automatic. A lot of the stuff that we're going to go over today on this video is going to be for the two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive in the automatic and the foot shift. Now, the first thing we're going to go over is the shifting. We've got our low range here, we've got high range, and then we've got our neutral, and then reverse. To go into low range, you're going to have to push the button. To go into high, you're not going to need the button. In reverse, you're going to need to push the button that is on the shift lever here. Ignition switch on the right hand side, just got your on and off, simple on and off. Your actual start button is up on the handlebars. I'll show you that here in a little bit. We've got your foot brake here on your right side. This is going to be strictly for the rear of the four-wheeler. And if we go back to the back area here, your foot brake and your left hand handle brake is going to be adjusted right here, and that is going to adjust your shoes that are in this drum here. Now what you're going to want to do, you want a little bit of slack. If you don't have slack in these cables or up at the lever, your brakes will constantly be dragging. So you want to make sure that you're not too tight here, and you tighten these up by turning these or loosening them if you need. We'll do another video on how to replace the brake shoes on this four-wheeler. Got your rear differential here. This is a common problem on these Prairie 400s. I would say, well, a good majority of them at some point will have a problem in the rear end. And the problem, it's got a solid axle. What happens is those splines in this rear differential, they loosen up, they start to get some play in them, and once that happens, this axle can just turn in the differential, and once you hit the gas, your prop shaft that's in this area here is going to spin, but your actual drive axle is not going to. So to change this oil, we've got a 17mm plug on the bottom side. We've got a hole in the bottom of the skid plate, and you won't be able to really see it in this video here, but it's right in the center of this skid plate. Like I said, it's a 17mm, and then the cap up here is actually where you fill it, and also that's where you check it. So when you're changing oil, you want to drain it out really good. You want to put the drain plug back in, make sure it's tightened down to the torque specs, and I can get those for you. And then you remove this. This cap should already be removed. You fill this up with oil till it starts to come out the top cap here, and you can see this is about halfway up your differential, and so that is plenty of oil. When it turns, when that gear inside there, the differential gear turns, it will slosh oil around. Your speedo gear is in this piece here, and you can see this one's broken off here, and they've plugged it. But this is your speedo cable here. Your speedo sensor goes down into your rear differential. We've got your toolbox over here, and it's got two straps. These are broken off at this point, but they're rubber straps. You take them off up top here. There's two tabs that you just will simply just push down or push kind of forward and out, and then that allows you to open this up. A lot of times your owner's manual's in here. Any toolkit is in there from the factory. You got your brake light there, your tail light there. These have a two-piece rack system, which isn't common on four-wheelers, but you got your plastic wrap or your fiberglass rack on top, and then they've got a frame underneath of them. So if you bend them up really good, more than likely you'll have to replace this rack because it'll be cracked up. More than likely also the rack underneath will have to be replaced as well. This one's in excellent shape for the age of the four-wheeler. This bottom rack, you can see here, there's some scuffs and scratches, maybe a couple small breaks on the actual plastic piece. One more thing in the back here, to remove your seat, you've got a pull lever here. You pull it, and a lot of times it'll pop the seat up. If not, when the four-wheeler's on the ground, it's a whole lot easier to do that. When you have two hands, you can pull this lever here right beside your toolbox to the left of it, and then lift up on your seat there. You got your recoil pole starter on this side, and that's down here. If you ever have a dead battery, make sure your ignition switch is turned on. Make sure your on-off lever here is on, or your on-off switch, and then you can go ahead and pull this lever. Just be prepared. It's going to take a little bit to pull over, and it's not an easy task. You got your fuel shut off here. We've got three positions. Off is right in the middle. You've got up, I believe, is on, and you've got down, which is reserve, is typically how they are. A lot of times they ride on them. This one I guess it is written on there. So your idle adjust for your four-wheeler, your carburetor's underneath here. We won't be able to see it in this video. I'll do another video where you can see it with the plastics off. And you adjust your idle right here. You want to make sure that you're going clockwise to turn your idle up, counterclockwise to turn it down. You never want to adjust your idle when your four-wheeler is cold. You want to make sure your four-wheeler is nice and warmed up before you adjust your idle. To change your engine oil now, we've got your drain plug underneath, and that is going to be a 14 millimeter, and there's a hole in the skid plate right in the, basically in the middle of it. You want to replace that engine oil. Then you also have your oil filter, and then your fill dipstick is here, and takes 3.4 liters of oil, and it's a very, very small dipstick. So you want to make sure that you have the correct amount of oil in there. And the way you do that is you put oil in there. I'd put around the 3.4, especially if you're changing your oil filter, which I'd suggest doing every time. Put the oil in there, and then put 3.4, and then run it for about a minute or two, and then let it sit for 30 seconds to a minute. Then come out here, check your oil, and see where it's pull it out, wipe off the dipstick, stick it back in, and see where your oil level is at. Adjusting your valves we'll do on a separate video, but this is your sight glass window here to check for top dead center. Just want to show you that why we're over in this area. We're gonna go around to this side. Now to change the oil in the front differential is a little bit more of a challenge. You want to take this black cover off. It's on the left-hand side of the four-wheeler. Is your is where you fill and where you you can see kind of here where you drain that oil. I've loosened some of these screws, but I'm gonna take these plastics off on a separate video. So make sure and watch that. But you get inside here, and you can't really see it all, but there is a fill mark about halfway up. It's right in front of that that CV boot. There is your fill mark, and then underneath you'll have a little slot in your skid plate, and you'll be able to get a 10 millimeter wrench in there and remove that oil drain bolt. I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. You're not gonna be able to see it here, but right here is where you get to that 10 millimeter. And you might be able to use a small 1/4 inch socket to get to that 10 millimeter drain, or maybe possibly a wrench. But there's a little slot in this skid for you to be able to see that and remove that oil. Same thing on this differential. You want to fill it up to where that cap is. If oil's coming out that cap, then you know you're full. Got your headlights there, and that switch is on the handlebars. We'll go up there next and check that out. We've got your front shocks here, tie rods, and I'll show you how to adjust those in a separate video. But you want to adjust both right and left side. This is your right. You always tell right and left when you're sitting on the four-wheeler. Adjust them here. You've got a nut here, and then a nut clear down inside there, and then you can put a wrench on these tie rods and adjust them to where they need to be. And I'll show you how to do that, like I said, in a separate video. Now, getting up on the four-wheeler here, we've got your switches and your levers. Obviously, right-hand side is your thumb throttle, and there should be a little bit of free play in that thumb throttle, because if it's completely tight, you want to adjust your cable here, pull this boot back, and just turn that cable in so that you have some free play. If there's no free play in it, then your four-wheeler will constantly be trying to go forward. Here's your front brakes here, and they are a hydraulic front brake. So they just control the front wheels, the front calipers on this four-wheeler. And so they'll slow you down quicker. You want to be careful on gravel or ice. You don't just slam on these, or you will could potentially start to lose control. Here is your dash here. When you turn your key on, dash will come up. You got your speed, you got your odometer, you got your time, stuff like that. We've got your indicators here. This is neutral and reverse. And when you shift down here to reverse, it should automatically kick that light on. Same way with neutral. And then forward, or high and low, no lights will be on here. On this side, you've got your parking brake. You pull this lever back, and then you pull this smaller lever here, and that'll engage your park brake. And I would not, on a trailer, on the back of a pickup, I would not suggest completely relying on this park brake here, as they have been known to fail. So when you get your key on, your start button is here, and you can, if you're in neutral, you can turn your hit your start button. Should start up your four-wheeler. We've got your lights here, 3 positions: off, low, and high. That's those headlights that we talked about down underneath there. We've got your on-off switch here, your off switch, your engine stop, run, and off switch. Should be in run when you hit the start button, or you will not get anything. And I would check that before you take it into a dealership. If your four-wheeler's not starting, maybe double check this run off switch, as that is a common mistake, having that in the wrong position when you go to start it. Four-wheeler doesn't start and you're wondering what in the world's happening. Choke lever here, if you pull it towards your left hand grip here, that is in the choke position. As soon as your four-wheeler is warmed up, you want to kick that back off, and while it's warming up, you can gradually kick it back down, and it should be completely seated, which would be forward when your choke is off there. You've got your override button here. That is when you're in reverse. You will be limited on how fast you can go. If you want to go faster than the four-wheeler allows, you hit this override button and just hold on that override button as you're pushing the throttle. What happens is they don't want you to go 50 mile an hour in reverse, or possibly a kid going 50 mile an hour in reverse and losing control. So they want to put that override on there. Here's your fuel level gauge. This is a common thing to go out. You can replace this separate from your fuel tank. You don't have to replace your fuel tank, but that sight glass window gets extremely hazy and you can't see it. You've got your on-off reserve switch, so you can just leave it on, and then if you need more fuel, kick it to reserve. Fuel tank cap here, obviously we are missing the hose, and that hose should be on there, some sort of a stopper. If your four-wheeler tips, you don't want fuel dumping out there, but also you don't want dirt and water going into that fuel tank, and it will, if this four-wheeler sits outside and this hose is left off, you will have water in that fuel tank. So you want to make sure and get a hose on there. Pulling the seat off here, a couple things to show you underneath here, and then we will do a couple more videos on the rest of the four-wheeler. Air filter here, 4 clips holding this air filter in, and to remove those, just kick these away from there, pull this cap off, pull this lid off, and your oil filter's underneath there. It takes a foam filter. A lot of times from the factory, it's one that you can remove, clean, and reuse. You want to make sure you oil it up with oil filter oil. You don't want to use just regular engine oil or any kind of oil. You want to use oil filter oil. It's sticky and it's extremely thick, and it's specifically made to keep dirt out of your engine. If you use engine oil, all that oil will drain to the bottom of the filter, the oil that isn't sucked into your engine, and you will have no protection from dirt and grime going through your intake. Got your battery here, your positive and negative. When you are sitting on the four-wheeler, your positive is on the right, on your left side. If you're sitting on the four-wheeler, your negative cable is on your right side. Got your ignition or your CDI box here. It's about a 3 by 4 inch black box, and it's a control module for the four-wheeler. It's another common problem that goes out, and they're not cheap. So you want to check other components before you go and replace that. Here's your ignition or your starter drive here, your starter relay, and you've got your positive wire coming in. As soon as you hit your start switch, it will jump across these terminals here and add power to the other side, run your starter that is down on your engine. Got your main fuse in this area as well. You want to make sure if your four-wheeler's not starting that you check that. To remove your battery, just pull this 10mm bolt here, pull these two 10mm in this case, bolts on top here for your positive and negative, lift your battery out. That is it for an overview of this Kawasaki Prairie 400. If you have questions, let me know. I can do different videos on these if we're needing to, and I will do carb clean on one of these. I'll do valve adjustment, tie rod replacement and adjustment. I will replace brake pads on these cables and disassemble this four-wheeler as far as we need to do as many videos as we need to for you guys. Thanks for watching.